The author of that reading, Jon Alexander, spent the first decade of his career as a British advertising executive. He soon realized that he was contributing to the 3,000 plus ads the average person sees a day. In the US, it's even more. He was caught up in the consumer story, but started to doubt it. He no longer wanted to sell stuff to consumers and instead wanted to involve people in the decisions that affect their lives as citizens. According to Alexander, the consumer story is the dominant story of our time. It goes something like this: each one of us is out for ourselves, and that is good. We extend out care to family and friends, sure, but that's it. In the consumer story, every organization is there to meet our needs. Our task is to earn money and then spend it on a plethora of things. Or so that's what advertisers want us to believe. We can create our own unique path forward, the consumer story tells us, by choosing the colors of our car or ordering special coffee drinks. The higher we climb the economic ladder, the more choice and power we get. The climb is competitive, so don't mess with me. Yet everybody wins. Everybody wins if we follow our own self-interest. That is at least the way the consumer story goes. In some sense, we have always been consumers, right? We've always needed clothing and calories and have bartered and bought to gain access. But consuming has never been our full story. The consumer story developed over time. After World War II, the consumer story became the globally dominant story that we tell ourselves. Alexander says that there are three main stories we have been telling ourselves these last couple of centuries. The subject story was the dominant one before the consumer story. Just give up your right to govern yourself, give up some of your own personal freedom, some choice, and we, the king, the queen, or the emperor, or the ruling elite, will take care of you. It is a top-down sort of thing. We just do what we are told, and we'll be safe and fed. This is best exemplified maybe by the British Empire. The subject story disempowers us, gives us safety, sure, but little to no choice. The consumer story promises us lots and lots of choices. I recently went to a coffee shop and ordered a latte. For those of you that don't know, a latte is espresso and steamed milk. It's 2 ingredients. Yet I was asked what flavoring I wanted in it. If I wanted the espresso long or short, which I still don't understand, and what kind of milk, which included skim, whole, 2%, soy, cashew, almond, or oat. I was bewildered by the options. I just wanted espresso and steamed milk. This consumer story, it tricks us into thinking we are free by giving us different kinds of lattes. These kinds of choices don't really give us power or true freedom. As a country, I think we've mostly transitioned out of the subject story. But from time to time, wannabe authoritarians will say to us, I'm the only one that can save the country. Just put your trust in me, and I will make America great again. In the consumer story, we think we are being activists when we don't buy bagels from the bagelry just down the block because they are the ones owned by conservatives. And Or when Bud Light has a trans person endorsing their beer and conservatives stop buying the product. Or when we go about thinking that we're going to save the world by buying an electric car. You vote with your pocketbook, the Consumer Story tells us. Consumer Story tells us that signing petitions and giving money to our favorite charity is doing our part. The Consumer Story has taken over our elections. The presidential debate is not an actual conversation of policies, and neither really is it a platform for getting answers to direct questions. The election is all about, what are you going to do for me? What are you going to say that I want to hear? The Consumer Story is hyper individualistic. It is leaving us alone and isolated. The Consumer Story is deadly for the environment. The consumer model is depleting our spirits and bankrupting the balance of life. But just as the world slowly transitioned out of the subject story and into the consumer story, we can move into the citizen story. The citizen story asks us not what your country can do for you, but what? What you can do for your country. And it does not matter in the citizen story if you are a green card holder or on a temporary visa. True citizenry goes beyond naturalized, natural born, or dual. You are a citizen no matter what your legal status is. Being a citizen is more than voting. Though voting is an important thing, so please do vote. Being a citizen is caring enough to get involved. It's turning off the TV, putting down the smartphone, and showing up. It's realizing that no one person can do everything, but everyone can contribute something. It's not another thing, it's the thing. We are members of community. We are citizens. In the book, Citizen, Alexander gives the example of a British environmental organization that when it started 150 years ago, it was started by nobility and aristocracy to save beautiful wild lands. And over time, it became an organization. That's sort of the subject story. And then over time, it became a membership group. You paid dues to be a member of this organization, and then you can go into these wild places. But now, and that's sort of the consumer story, but now this organization is raising up citizen scientists. It is organizing chapters locally to work on environmental legislation. It's transitioning into the citizen story. Being a citizen is intersecting our power and our passion. When we citizen, we know our freedom is deeper than anything we can buy. A citizen recognizes all of us are in this together. And to make things happen, we don't wait for elite rulers. We cooperate and form partnerships now. Citizening is getting a playground built with no money, but only ideas and relationships. As I'm reflecting on this book, I was thinking about how to apply this to faith communities, congregational life. We no longer are in the subject story here. We have gathered, we have departed from the all-knowing sage on a stage who calls all the shots. The subject story maybe is still alive in religion, maybe especially in Roman Catholicism and other organizations that have a really deep and high structure where bishops and someone in charge and no one else has a say in things. This all stems from what I gather as a theology of God that is where God is in charge of the universe. The consumer story of religious community is someone that comes, gets what they need, maybe even pays for it, and leaves. Religion becomes simply a Sunday transaction. But I think we are different. We are a congregation of citizens. And sometimes we come broken and we need each other. A word, some music, and the connection to minister to us. But a lot of the other time, we are giving back to our community. After all, we have a shared ministry. We get involved, we give input, we serve on different teams and committees. We minister to each other. What the world needs now is love. Our beloved community. The world needs us. The citizen story is about relationship, partnership, and collaboration. This is what we do. We give and receive. We do what we can do. There are so many examples that I see in this congregation, but I want to highlight one of the more recent things, and that is our participation in You the Vote. We collectively are sending out hundreds of voter turnout cards to disenfranchised voters in Georgia. Thank you, Rebecca Rivers, for organizing. In this congregation, even preaching is not a consumer story thing. It's a shared pulpit. Congregants preach sermons here. We are shifting from a consumer mindset. To put the citizen story, I think, in its most basic religious terms, a citizen loves their neighbor. There is no doubt in my mind that the world needs now is an inclusive love. We have plenty of fear and division in our country. Let love be the heart of our faith and shower people with love. Citizening, that's kind of hard to say, use it as a verb, is the practice of being love in the world. Martin Luther King Jr. said that justice is what love looks like in public. One of my colleagues, the Reverend Matthew Johnson, added that inclusion is what love looks like in groups. Loving our neighbor is building more justice and inclusion in our community. But it's not easy. Last week, during my son's soccer game and practice, I heard another kid on his team making fun of another kid for being Chinese. The sad thing is I heard coaches, I know parents and other coaches heard this too. And for a moment, I think the consumer story took over me. That's someone else's problem. I'm just a parent. I just need to care for my family. But finally, I said enough's enough. That's not cool. Everyone is welcome here. The work of being a citizen is not easy. And I think the song that Haley and John sang earlier, One by U2, gets at the complexity of living a love in the world. The song starts out sort of as a dialogue, sort of, you could be interpreted as a lover's quarrel almost, but it's vague enough to apply for many situations. When the band U2 wrote this song, the band was getting away from the group improvising and jamming that created much of their earlier work. For an upcoming recording session, they went to Berlin, and this is 1990, shortly after the Berlin Wall came down, and there was euphoria in the streets. The guitarist, whose name is The Edge, that's his stage name, I think, and the lead singer, again, his stage name is Bono, came up with a bunch of ideas for this recording session and a new direction for a sound for their band. But this left the drummer and the bassist out, and they felt disconnected. And there was fear that the band would break up. But the song One brought them back in unity, partly because the song grew organically from within and everyone in the band. I can't help but think of this song and apply it to our country right now. We have our own Berlin Wall separating blue and red. We are a band about to break up. We are divided, yet we are one country, one human blood, one love, one life. U2's One isn't a sentimental or idealized new age or hippie version of this sort of love. It's an existential and sort of a punk rock oneness that involves work, struggle, passion, giving, and taking. The kind of things all long-term relationships go through, whether it's romantic, a marriage, a congregation, a band, or a country. We are one, but we are not the same. We get to share it. We hurt each other, and we do it again. That oneness can leave us if we don't care for it. And love is a temple. Love is a higher call. So grace comes into play because we get to carry each other. Carry each other. We don't have to carry each other. We don't got to carry each other. We get to carry each other. What our country needs now is this sort of reaching out, this grace of carrying each other over the divisive cultural and political wall that we have created. What the world needs now is our sense of a citizen love, a oneness that is complex and fragile, but possible. Our congregation is proof. So for all of you out there who are loving your neighbor with honesty, patience, and compassion, for all of you out there who are loving your neighbor by volunteering on committees and boards and teams here and in the community, that are writing postcards to disenfranchised voters, lobbying state representatives, thank you. Thank you for creating a citizen story and carrying each other. Amen. And so may it be.